Yikes! Alright, so this is the passenger side hub. We're doing a wheel bearing on this as well. Just so you know, there is a seal on the back and the front. This is not a sealed wheel bearing. You have to put a separate seal in. You want to spin it around. See the seal on the inside of the hub flange. Well, actually, really you can't see it right now, but it's down in there. Yeah, so you got to pull those out as you take this apart. We'll go ahead and pop it out. Oh, look at that. Just came right out. Boom. Pried it right out with a screwdriver. Now, also of note, there is a inner and outer snap ring. There's a snap ring on both sides of this hub. I've never actually run into this before on a vehicle. Neither has old Phil. It's kind of weird. You really got to get in there with the 2 screwdrivers and kind of pry around the edge to get it out. There's the first one. Try not to damage them because you're going to have to reuse them. The bearings that I bought, at least, did not come with new snap rings, which is kind of nuts. Alright, so this is, you know, not a press, as you can see. It's kind of backyard mechanic, but this is what we have to do to get this out. We have to get the flange out, the actual thing that the wheel hub bolts to, which is this center section. That's why Phil's using the socket, held on by channel locks and a hammer, and we're going to pound that out because there's the snap ring on the other side, so we can't drive the whole bearing out right now. Alright, so I'm going to try to hold this as you hold on. You know what? I think I'd rather have it. Look at that. It's coming right out. There she goes. Straight out. All done. Crazy. Alright, so now you're getting the seal out. This is that outer seal, which is really was on the back side of the flange. Alright, so there's the snap ring again on the inside. Hold it up there for you. Gotta work those 2 screwdrivers, slide the other one back side, and just keep working it out and around. You gotta lift it out. Watch out, sometimes those will fly out, so wear safety glasses, watch your face, they'll smack you. And now we have to go about getting out the center race. Alright, so we have the hub up in the press. We got our special tool here, just the end cap for a pipe. We'll show the dimensions for this. We had to grind off the sides a little bit to make it fit, but it just slides on in there. Alright. And keep going. It started to move. I always love using the press. It's a little bit scary every time. And this does help tapping around the side. That actually will break the race loose. Ooh, she does not want to come out. A little more pressure. Woo! There she goes. Oh. That was the race breaking loose. It's freaky every time it does that.
It's pretty scary.
Because there is a lot of hydraulic pressure on that. Wow, look at that. That's interesting. So, when I test drove this car, every time I would turn, I'd hear like a scraping noise. And look at that right there. See that? That was the actual rotor hitting because there was that much play in the wheel bearings. What was weird about this car, though, is that it didn't have the classic whirling noise of the wheel bearings at all. It had a little bit of shake in the steering wheel when you accelerated, and when you turn again, you could hear the brakes rubbing. Weird.
Yeah, most of the time you can hear, well, if you know about cars, it's a distinctive sound if the wheel bearing going bad, but you should definitely be able to hear like a whirring sound or a low growl.
A low growl, right.
And if you turn the wheel like left and right when you get down the road, you can hear it shift back and forth. And
I could hear that, but again, no low growl or whirling noise. Very strange.
Yeah, but most of the time when you hear any noises like that, it's usually a wheel bearing.
And look at that, just dropped right out. And keep going, our special tool we made also fall out. There it goes.
We already went through this on there.
Yep, so you just want to clean it out real nice in there. Make sure there's no burrs or scratches. If there are any burrs or scratches, just take some 120 grit sandpaper and lightly sand them out. As long as the burrs are gone and smooth, the new bearing will press back in nice and easy. Alright, so we're going to put the rear snap ring in, because the direction we're going to put the bearing in is from the front of the hub. So use some snap rings there, get it in the bore, make sure it's popped in. If you need to slide it down into the groove, just do that with a flat blade screwdriver. Yep, it's all nice and in there. Very nice. Alright, head back to the press. And we'll get set back up. Alright, so we're taking some STP again, and we're just going to put a light coating on the inside of the hub, and that will help the bearing press in it. You can do this dry, but the bearing will kind of ratchet in. It'll pop, pop, pop in, and if you use a little bit of this STP oil treatment or assembly lube, like for rod bearings, it'll just go in a lot easier. Also, the bearing has been sitting in the freezer for about an hour, so it's nice and icy cold, and that just helps shrink the bearing. The bore for the bearing in the hub is larger right now because it's hot, so this should slide right in pretty easy. So I'm going to set that in there. Alright. You want to get this started on the bench?
Yeah, we can do that.
So we're going to tap this in and just get it started. Sometimes on the press, bearings don't like to start, they'll go in crooked. So you just want to tap back and forth. Now, Phil, why are you tapping on the outside of the bearing?
Because that's solid all the way through. If you tap in here, this is where the race in the bearing cage is, and if you hit it, you could drive the other side out.
And just so everybody knows, it's plastic. The race that holds the actual ball bearings is just phenolic.
And this goes on the other side.
Yep.
So if you're driving it too hard, you would drive this out of the back, and you loosen up the basket.
Or you can also crack that phenolic race, and then you don't know it, but when you go down the road like 10,000 miles later, your bearing's toast.
Yep, and also if you move it, I mean, these things are all pre-packed with grease. The more you move them, the more grease is going to slide out of there, and the less life your bearing's going to have.
So we're just taking a nice flat piece of stainless steel. You could use a piece of wood, but being on sharp edge like this, the nice stainless steel works a little bit better. And if you didn't have a press, you could actually get this whole bearing in like this. It would just take a little time. Now, because it is cold, it's going in nice and easy.
Okay. Now for our special 2-inch galvanized pipe end cap.
thing leaking?
A little bit, maybe.
I think it is a little bit. Alright, so this should press this in nicely. Look at that. It's sliding right in. See, that ratcheting of the bearing would be way worse without the STP in there. Or the bearing being really cold. So you want to just keep going with the press until you feel a pressure, like right there. Yep, he just hit pressure. It is seated on the snap ring. Yep. Oh, it needs to go a little bit farther.
I think that it was.
A little bit farther. It's always good to check. Oh, there it goes. And that's it. Now it's on the snap ring. Alright. Is that jammed in there?
A little bit, if you want to get a view.
Look at that. It's seated on the snap ring. If we roll it over, try to tap that out. Now if you look in here, see it? The top of the bearing is even where the snap ring groove is. That's where you know it's perfectly seated.
That worked really, really well.
Is that tool we made?
It worked really well.
Is that thing clean? Alright, now we're just going to put that last snap ring in, the outer snap ring. Drop it in. Alright, let's make sure it's popped in to the snap ring groove, and it looks like it is. Very nice.
Nissan Maxima here, I don't know why they designed it this way, but this has snap ring on either side, and you have to have a wheel seal on either side. I don't know why it's like that. Most of the other vehicles are not. Just one seal on one side.
Well, most of them have sealed bearings too.
Sealed bearings.
The entire wheel bearing has seals in it.
Most of them have a little magnetic thing here on the back for ABS, but this does not have ABS, and maybe that's the reason why. But it's kind of a pain to me to mess with this double seal thing. It's kind of dumb.
It's just a lot more work. If the wheel bearings were sealed, you wouldn't even have to worry about this. You pop the wheel bearing in, the snap ring, and you're on your way.
Now when you're putting a seal on, you want to be very careful. It's very easy to mess these things up. You want to tap very, very lightly. Tap too hard, these things bend very easy.
She's messing with you. She keeps popping out on both sides.
Might be it right there. That's it.
And it might seem silly, but using a block of wood, it's soft, but it still transmits the force from the hammer. It's not going to damage that seal.
Okay, if you want to get a shot, look. She's all sealed in around. That's what she'll look. The lip right around here should be all good.
Should be all even and flat.
And that's one side done.
Yep.
All except we got to put the seal on the front, but it's the same process. Just repeat the process. It's a little bit more difficult because you have this lip here. But I mean, if you have a big enough socket or something, you could get it and really lightly tap it, or you know, a small drift pin or punch.
Yep. Drift punch.
But that's it. That simple.
All right, so we're installing the rear wheel bearing seal. And to get it to go in, we're going to use an ABS sensor ring from a Nissan drive axle. And it fits perfectly in there. If you don't have one of these, you could get a source of piece of pipe from the local hardware store. Or use a drift punch to tap it in. Problem is with just going with a drift punch is a lot of times these seals will want to pop back out on you. That's why it's nice to have this nice ring of metal. Looks like you're getting it started. These things can be tricky, and I've done these quite a few times, and they don't always come perfectly round from the factory, so they can be tricky to get started. Once they're start to press in, though, it's pretty straightforward. You just tap them around the outer perimeter until they seat all the way around. Good? Alright, and that is a nicely seated wheel bearing seal. Now notice that we've cut this at an angle. That's very important. If you don't cut at an angle and you try to cut straight on, you won't actually be able to cut all the way through without gouging the flange here, the hub flange here, and up here. You have to cut at that angle to get all the way across. And basically what we're going to do is cut deep enough, but not go into the hub shaft, just deep enough to whack this with a hammer and a chisel or hammer and crack along where we've cut. After that happens, the bearing rest will slide right off. So you want to strike right in the cut. If it's deep enough, it will crack.
Quite deep enough.
Alright, so this is kind of a trial and error. Sometimes you got to go back and cut it a little bit deeper before it'll crack. Get in there real close and show everybody. So that's what we're talking about. We mean we're getting pretty close, but not all the way through. All right, we've moved to the vise because the bench top was just too much play. Oh, don't miss. And there it goes. Everybody hear that? You can see pieces of it shattering off. That's pretty much what you want, although usually it cracks all the way at the cut.
Well, no nick in there.
Instead of coming off in pieces. That's kind of weird, but hey, you know, first time for everything, right?
Bad, it probably was getting hot.
That's true. The metal could have become really brittle from getting hot and then cold, because these wheel bearings were getting really toasty. So going back in for some more cutting. You don't want to give up. And if only the vise was, you know, bolted to the bench or something.
Maybe she started cracking. They usually pop right off there. They do.
I know.
There we go.
This is pretty much worst case scenario that I've ever experienced. But it's cracked now. How hot is that? It's not that hot. So now that it's cracked,
So come over there.
see how it turns? You'll actually be able to pry it off now. Oh, there it goes. And it's off. Alright, seal pops off. And wipe her down, get her nice and clean. And at this point you would inspect to see if you actually did any kind of damage. We got a little nick mark. And honestly, all you have to do,
get a little emery cloth.
Get a little emery cloth and just go over it a few times and it will smooth it right out. Alright, so we're going to apply some of our Stp oil treatment before we press this hub into the bearing. Go around a little bit. This just helps everything press together. You don't get any of that ratcheting effect. Alright, there we go. Alright, so we have our hub flange on the press. We're going to put the whole hub up on the hub flange in the press. We're using a socket and we're pressing on the inside bearing race. That's really important. If you tried to do this the other way and press the flange down into the bearing, you'd actually push the bearing apart. So that's why we have to do the hub onto the hub flange. Alright. There we go. Make sure this is nice and tight. I'll start working down.
Keep on going, go ahead.
Alright, now I'm going nice and slow because if you're not nice and square on the hub flange, the bearing will start pressing on crooked, and that'll get you into some troublesome territory. Going good?
Go ahead, go ahead. Keep it coming. Nice and smooth with the STP on there.
It is. It's not ratcheting hardly at all.
Just slide on there real smooth. A little bit there. Yep, keep it going.
Alright, so you'll know when you hit the bottom because you'll feel a pressure build up in the press and it will not move anymore.
This should be good.
And there's that slight pressure, so I'm going to stop and release. And there you go.
There you have it.
Nicely pressed in, wheel bearing hub and wheel bearing replaced in the hub itself. So this is good to go on now.